Next, we will hear from Liberator and fellow tank commander Carrol Walsh. As has been mentioned, it was the initial interview done with Judge Walsh during the summer of 2001 that led Mr. Rozelle to George Gross and all of the survivors to them. Ladies and gentlemen, Carrol Walsh.
Good afternoon. Before I start with the remarks, that I prepared for today, I would like to mention that I do regret the absence of my good friend George Gross. It was my honor to serve with him in the 743rd Tank Battalion. Ultimately, we each became tank commanders, had our own tanks, but for one period, a lengthy period, we served together in the same tank. He was a very serious young man. I loved him. He apparently loved me. When I became tank commander, he was the gunner. And we'd sit in that little turret at night, couldn't get out of the tank. And he was as tall, long-legged as I am. And we would take a couple of shells and put them down, make like a line. And we'd say, now, you stay on that side, and I'll stay on this side. Of course, we never did. We fought all night long. And one final thing, Tim mentioned about the boxing. He was very proud of his boxing skills and boxing in general. Ace Leiter was our driver. Ace was quite a character. And Ace and I would say, did you hear about Grossy? What about him? Yeah, he's a boxer, champion boxer. He could box more oranges in California than anybody else. George never said much, but I'm sure he didn't like that very much. Anyway, I miss him. I'm sorry he can't be here because I know what all this meant to him. And I know what he means to all these people who are the survivors who did meet him. And now I have a few words I want to share with you. I want to give thanks to Mr. Matt Rozelle, and thanks to him for his interest in history, and in particular the history of World War II. An isolated event that occurred in the closing days of that war came to light after being buried for years in the musty vaults of history and the fading memories of the survivors of that event. Today brings together some of those survivors to tell you the story of that event, a confluence of time and place that cast them together forever. It was the morning of Friday, April 13, 1945, in a place called Farsleben, Germany, near Magdeburg on the Elbe River, where a train of shabby, grimy boxcars, each car crammed with Jewish prisoners of the Nazis, on its way from the Nazi Bergen-Belsen concentration camp to another camp further east, in an attempt to escape from the advancing U.S. Army that had come to a halt, that train had come to a halt when the Germans and their SS guards, fearing imminent capture by the Americans, suddenly abandoned the train. not knowing why the train had stopped, assuming and fearing that their SS guards were still in control and lurking about, unaware of the approaching Americans, the occupants of the train remained, for the most part, confined in those boxcars. Suddenly, seemingly from out of nowhere, like an apparition, appeared two tanks, each with big white star emblems prominently displayed on its turret. American tanks. Despair gave way to joy. The tanks had intercepted and permanently ended the train's journey and the transport of the occupants to their probable death. Coming upon a standing train with a long line of boxcars was surprise enough for the tank commanders and their crews, but nothing in comparison with what they were about to discover was in those boxcars. To their horror, they found that the boxcars were filled with hundreds of starving, sick, dying men, women, and children in worn and filthy clothes, so wedged and crowded together in those boxcars that they were unable to sit down, and without any sanitary or toilet facilities whatsoever. The tankers, never before having witnessed or been subject to anything such as that which their eyes beheld, were shocked, stunned, appalled, horrified at the incredible sight. And so should be all of you. All of you here should be shocked and appalled as you listen to the stories of these survivors of that dreadful train who are here with us today to address you. What else did those ugly boxcars reveal to those two tank commanders and their crews of the 743rd Tank Battalion? It was something more compelling and indelible than the physical sights that met their gaze. It was the revelation of what bigotry, racial hatred, intolerance, ignorance can unleash, and what brought the people on that train and millions of others to the unimaginable condition and fate in which they found themselves. Innocent one and all, guilty of no crime, their only offense, and which condemned them, was that they were Jewish. It was bigotry, racial hatred, intolerance, the evil ideology of Hitler and the Nazis that put those people on that train and that caused the death of millions